I I got into the diplomacy program, because I wanted to understand the refugee crisis. After Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico in 2017, I guess I was awakened to this reality that anyone can be a victim of a natural disaster. And many Puerto Ricans lost their homes due to floods, landslides, strong winds, and we went without power for almost 5 months, and there were some that went without power for almost a year. And I started thinking, we lost our homes. I mean, I didn't, my family didn't, thank God, but many people did. And but at least we had, to some extent, the help of the federal government, because Puerto Rico is a commonwealth. And but there are, in other countries in Africa, in the Middle East, in Somalia, in Southeast Asia, these people don't have that kind of help that we have. So when they lose their homes, they have to, most of the time, they get displaced. Not only, sometimes within the country they live in, or they have in other circumstances, they have to cross national borders and become internationally displaced. Some become stateless, and some become refugees in refugee camps. And I guess I became aware of the plight of refugees, and I was like, okay, I need to do something. I want to understand their challenges. I want to understand their situations, and the best way to do it is to get into a master's degree in international relations and diplomacy. However, when I applied for the master's degrees, at least in 3 different schools, I didn't get into any. It was horrible. And on top of that, there was a hurricane. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I mean, I don't have a master's degree. I don't have a job. On top of that, I don't have power, electricity, or internet, and it was crazy. So I think it was October 2017, after the hurricane. I came across this program at Seton Hall University, and I saw that it had a connection with the United Nations, and I decided to apply. So I went to the city once every 2 weeks, to get in touch with my professors, because I didn't have electricity or power or internet, so I had to go to their homes and ask for the recommendation letters, ask for feedbacks on my letter of intent. So I applied, and I think I was accepted, because I think, like, telling my experience in the letter of intent, and also telling my experience about working for FEMA, because after the hurricane, I think it was in January 2018, I got a position with FEMA as a case manager, where I was able to help people that lost their homes and their belongings and their livelihoods. And I think telling my experience as a humanitarian in the letter of intent opened me the door to pursue my master's degree. So the experience of the hurricane, plus my experience as a humanitarian with FEMA, guided me in the path towards becoming an international humanitarian that wants to, like, help refugees. And that's basically it. At the university, I was able to get a position as a vice president of the Graduate Diplomacy Council. I was also a United Nations digital representative, where we try to do good things, like raise awareness on certain international issues. I also was able to get an internship with the United Nations Population Fund, which is a UN agency that deals with sexual violation, childbirth, family planning, basically anything that has to do with sexual violence and gender-based violence and female genital mutilations, and advancing gender equality for women. And there I became aware of sexual violence against men and boys, something that happens in conflicts, in wars, in refugee camps, and in any country in our daily lives. However, I knew men were raped. I knew men are also victims of sexual violence, but I didn't know. It was something like I knew very deep inside of me. Because when people mention rape or sexual violence, they immediately think of women and girls. And that was me too. Until I got into this internship and I was assigned this research about sexual violence against men and boys. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So that's when I was awakened to this reality that men and boys experience unimaginable sexual violence and rape and forms of rape that may amount to torture in conflicts in Syria, in Yemen, in refugee camps, in prisons in the United States. And I think that I got into the program to understand the refugee crisis, and along the way, the program and the experiences it gave me helped me narrow it down to sexual violence against men and boys in refugee settings. So it's been amazing. It hasn't been easy either. It hasn't been like all victories and achievements. I have my struggles too, and like any other person. Along the way, I think it was 3 months into the program, and I was also diagnosed with leukemia. So I had to go back home, go through chemo for 8 months, finish my incompletes in the summer of 2019, until I finally came back in August of 2019 to now find out that I had to come back home and finish the program remotely because of COVID-19. So even though I have had these amazing opportunities, it hasn't been without struggles or opposition or anxiety or anything that we as humans always experience. But I hope that once I graduate this fall, I'll be able to get a job with the United Nations to help further my interests with refugees and sexual violence against
I feel like that would give you a unique perspective on COVID too, because you said like with the hurricane you experienced being without power, and then as you told me, like you had leukemia and you beat leukemia, right? Like I don't know if you recovered, so that must have prepared you for what's going on now with COVID and the risk of and the lockdowns. Like, I mean, obviously that's not the same as not having power, but it's kind of like the similar. Like it's like how people are locked in. Like it's not as easy for people to go to work and stuff like that. So and the risk of being sick, like you've already had like a problem with your health. So maybe that kind of prepared you. I'm just thinking like that must have given you like a unique perspective on what's going on.
You mean going through COVID and remote working and learning?
Yeah, like the stuff you went through in the past, like must have. Like I'm just thinking, like you must have a unique take on like it must have prepared you for what's going on now with COVID, while other people weren't as prepared. Maybe.
Actually, yes, it did. I remember that when I got into the program in 2018, I dealt with a lot of anxiety from being away from home. I remember that I couldn't be away from my phone. As soon as I got up in the morning, I had to call my mom or my brothers or friends just to feel that I was connected to home here in Puerto Rico. Once I remember that I woke up in the morning and my phone was dead, and I got this anxiety and my heart started pounding. And I think I almost had how do you call that? How do you call that when your heart is pounding really fast? And I got I think an anxiety episode until my phone was charged and I was able to call my family. And I think going through leukemia, it made me stronger because it's not easy being diagnosed with this illness that not many people get to survive. I remember that I was in a room in the hospital with 2 different people and both of them died, and I'm still here. And just going through chemo, going through different biopsies And I even got chemo from my through my spinal cord, and going through all that, it makes you stronger. It makes you look at life with faith, with hope, and it makes you. It helps you understand that every day is it's a struggle, but it's also a blessing, an opportunity to do things better. So when I came back in 2019 to school, I wasn't as close or as attached to my phone or family. I was able to go through the day and days without calling my mom or my family, and so it also made me stronger to deal with the United Nations, because it's an environment with a lot of people from all over the world, with a lot of competition, and it gives you, going through that gives you some kind of perspective and character that otherwise I wouldn't have had. So now with COVID, I came back home, and I don't feel like I lost something. I don't feel like I'm losing opportunities or experiences in New Jersey or at the UN, because if I lived through that, I will be able to live through COVID and remote learning and remote working. And what it gave me most is that a positive outlook on life, no matter what's happening around you, be it a pandemic or illness or failure. It's like, I've survived this, I can survive anything. But not just for myself. I want to continue living, but for others. I want to help others. I want to give back at this second chance that I've gained of life. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of times people think that, you know, if you go through a lot of things, you're gonna be more cynical or bitter. But it sounds like it, and like with you and with other people too that I've talked to, it makes you more grateful, or it makes you want to help other people or have more empathy for people that are less fortunate. And I think it sounds like, in a way, it kind of helped you, like both the hurricane and being sick with leukemia kind of helped you find your purpose in a way, because you said that's when, like, the activism and like you wanted to help refugees came in.
Yeah, I don't think it guided me, the experience I have with leukemia. I was already in the path. I think it just gave me more character and strength to keep going, to do the work that I wanted to do. I feel like before that I was lacking a lot of strength and character. I think I was anything that would happen to me would strike me. Would hit me in a way that would bring me down. But when you go through that, and you're stronger, and you go through certain experiences with people or in life, and now after going through all the hurricane, leukemia, and now COVID, I think not everything brings me down as before. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, because it's more like seeing the bigger picture, not taking things for granted. Because I guess it's easier to see the beauty in like the simple things in life, and like focus more on what matters, like what's important.
Exactly, and at least I have my family support, my friends, and but then you start thinking about refugees. You know how many refugees may have cancer, or diabetes, or heart diseases, and they're in refugee camps. And I mean, the United Nations and NGOs give a lot of aid, humanitarian aid, and psychological services and health services. There's so much they can do for 75 million people that are displaced right now in the world. And I remember being in a room getting chemo, and I was like thinking about refugees that needed chemo in refugee camps. I think like being displaced or being stateless and also going through an illness like that is not easy. So it also gave me the perspective, not perspective, more like courage, or guidance of like I knew that this is what I really wanted to do.